The crystal spires of Valyria Prime pierced the violet sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces catching the light of twin suns and scattering it in rainbow fragments. Across the floating gardens below, Marcus Chen stepped off the transport platform, his engineer's toolkit weighing heavy on his shoulder as he took in the breathtaking architecture that seemed to defy every law of physics he'd spent years studying. "Welcome to our world, human," said his Valyrian escort, a tall, graceful being with skin that shimmered like starlight and eyes the color of deep ocean trenches. "I am Scholar Naya. The princess awaits you in the archive chamber." Marcus nodded, still overwhelmed by the beauty surrounding him. 3 months ago, he'd been just another civilian engineer working on Earth's orbital stations. Then the Valyrian delegation had arrived, seeking human expertise for their most sacred technological mysteries. Somehow, his name had been selected from thousands of applicants for this unprecedented cultural exchange. They glided through corridors lined with living crystal that hummed with gentle harmonics, past gardens where flowers bloomed in impossible geometric patterns. Valyrian citizens paused to stare at Marcus with curious, luminous eyes, their flowing robes rippling like liquid silk as they whispered among themselves. "Your people fascinate ours," Naya explained, her melodic voice carrying hints of ancient wisdom. "In all our travels across the galaxy, we have never encountered a species quite like humanity. There's something different about you." "Different how?" Marcus asked, adjusting his toolkit as they entered a vast chamber whose walls stretched up into misty darkness. "You will understand soon enough," Naya replied with a mysterious smile. The archive chamber was a marvel of crystalline technology and organic architecture. Floating platforms drifted through the air like lily pads on an invisible pond, each one holding ancient artifacts that glowed with inner light. At the chamber's heart stood a raised dais where a figure waited, her presence commanding attention despite her youth. Princess Zera of House Stellaris was nothing like Marcus had expected. Where other Valyrians appeared ethereal and distant, she radiated a warmth that seemed almost human. Her silver blue skin held an opalescent quality that shifted from pearl to azure as she moved, and her long, flowing hair caught the chamber's ambient light like captured starshine. She wore a simple gown of deep purple that complemented her violet eyes, and when she smiled at Marcus's approach, he felt something shift in his chest, a recognition he couldn't explain. "Marcus of Earth," she said, her voice carrying musical undertones that resonated in his bones. "I am honored by your presence. We have waited long for one such as you." "Your Highness," Marcus replied, offering a bow that felt awkward compared to her natural grace. "I'm just an engineer. I'm not sure what you're expecting, but come," Zera interrupted gently, gesturing toward a corridor he hadn't noticed before. "There is something I must show you, something that has remained hidden for 10,000 years." They descended through layers of the Crystal Palace, moving deeper than Marcus had thought possible. The walls here were older, their surfaces rough-hewn and covered with symbols that seemed to writhe in his peripheral vision. The very air felt thick with age and secrets. "Tell me," Zera said as they walked, "what do your people believe about the origins of humanity?" Marcus considered the question. "We have theories, evolution, ancient astronaut hypotheses, various religious beliefs." "Why?" "Because your origins are not what you think," she replied, her violet eyes meeting his. "And neither are ours." They emerged into a cavern so vast that its ceiling disappeared into shadows. At its center, resting on a platform of black stone, sat a ship unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. It was beautiful and terrifying, its hull a seamless blend of organic curves and geometric precision. The metal, if it was metal, seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating an effect that made the vessel appear to exist partially outside normal space. "The Void Walker," Zera whispered, her voice filled with reverence and fear. "The last ship of the ancients. For 10 millennia, it has rested here, waiting." Marcus felt drawn to the vessel with an intensity that bordered on compulsion. His feet carried him forward without conscious thought, his hand reaching out toward the ship's strange surface. "Marcus, no," Zera called out, alarm clear in her voice. "No one may touch the Void Walker. It is forbidden." The energies within could, but his palm was already pressing against the ship's hull. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. Light erupted from every surface of the vessel, patterns racing across its hull like liquid electricity. The cavern filled with a harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate with Marcus's very bones, and he felt something vast and ancient awakening after eons of slumber. Zara gasped, her hands flying to her chest as she staggered backward. Through the growing luminescence, Marcus could see her eyes wide with shock and something else, a dawning wonder that transformed her features into something even more beautiful than before. Impossible, she breathed. The prophecies spoke of the star-touched one, but we thought they were merely legend. The one who would awaken the sleeping guardians and herald a new age of unity among the stars. The ship's hull was shifting beneath Marcus's palm, sections sliding away to reveal an entrance that beckoned with warm, golden light. He turned to Zara, seeing his own amazement reflected in her luminous eyes. "I don't understand what's happening," he said, his voice barely audible over the ship's harmonic song. Zara stepped closer, her fear overcome by curiosity and something deeper, a pull toward Marcus that she couldn't explain. "Neither do I," she admitted, "but I can feel it, a connection between us that should not exist. Your touch awakened not just the ship, but something within me as well." Their eyes met across the space between them, and Marcus felt that same inexplicable recognition intensify. Whatever was happening, whatever ancient forces they had awakened, he knew that his life and hers would never be the same. The Void Walker chooses its pilot. Zara continued, her voice soft with wonder. "In all our recorded history, no one has ever been deemed worthy, not even our greatest heroes or wisest scholars, and yet here we are." Marcus replied, extending his hand toward her. "Whatever this means, whatever we've started, I don't think we're meant to face it alone." Zara hesitated for only a moment before placing her hand in his. The contact sent a shock of energy through both of them, and the ship's song grew stronger, more complex, as if approving of their union. "Together then," she whispered, her violet eyes shining with newfound determination and something that looked remarkably like the beginning of love. As they stood before the awakened vessel, neither of them noticed the shadows gathering at the cavern's edges, or the way certain symbols on the ancient walls had begun to pulse with a malevolent red light. The awakening of the Void Walker had sent ripples across dimensions, alerting forces that had slumbered for millennia. But in that moment, Marcus and Zara only had eyes for each other, and the impossible ship that had somehow recognized them both as its chosen ones. The first chapter of an epic that would span worlds and challenge the very nature of love itself had begun. The archive's deepest sanctum had never felt smaller to Princess Zara as she paced between towering crystal formations, each one pulsing with soft bioluminescence that seemed to respond to her agitated state. 3 days had passed since Marcus had awakened the Void Walker, and the palace buzzed with whispered speculation and barely concealed fear. Her mother, Queen Celestini, had confined them both to the archives while the royal council debated what to do about the unprecedented awakening. Marcus sat cross-legged before a holographic display, his human fingers dancing through streams of data that scholar Naya had reluctantly provided. The forbidden texts floated before him in three-dimensional script, their ancient Valyrian symbols slowly translating as the palace's linguistic matrices adapted to his neural patterns. "This is incredible," Marcus murmured, his brown eyes reflecting the shifting text. "These aren't just historical records, they're genetic maps, star charts, and are these temporal coordinates?" Naya approached cautiously, her usual scholarly composure cracked by days of revelations that challenged everything she thought she knew. The Codex Stellaris was written by the last of the ancients before they vanished from our galaxy. Most scholars believed it to be mythological poetry, not literal instruction. Zara paused in her pacing, drawn by the excitement in Marcus's voice. Despite the chaos surrounding them, she found herself constantly aware of his presence, as if some invisible thread connected them across the chamber. The feeling had only grown stronger since their shared moment before the Void Walker. "Look at this passage," Marcus said, highlighting a section of the floating text. "It describes something called the Convergence Protocol, a biological safeguard encoded into two separate species that were once one people. The star-touched and the dream-weavers, Naya read aloud, her voice hushed with reverence. According to legend, they were the ancients' greatest creation to halves of a perfect whole, separated across the cosmos to preserve their essence. Should darkness ever threaten the galaxy again? Zara felt a chill run down her spine as understanding began to dawn. You're suggesting that humans and Valyrians are these two halves, not suggesting. Marcus replied, his excitement barely contained as he pulled up another display, proving. Look at the genetic markers highlighted in both our DNA samples. The base sequences are nearly identical, but modified in specific ways. Valyrians developed enhanced psychic abilities and extended lifespans, while humans retained adaptability. And what the text called dimensional immunity, the implications hung heavy in the air between them. Zara moved closer to Marcus, drawn by an irresistible impulse to touch his hand. The moment their skin made contact, the archive's crystal formations blazed with sudden light, and both of them gasped as visions flooded their minds. They saw a civilization that spanned galaxies, beings of incredible beauty and power who had mastered both technology and the fundamental forces of reality itself. They witnessed the first contact with an entity from beyond normal space, something ancient and hungry that fed on consciousness itself. The desperate war that followed, the terrible choice to fragment their people and scatter them across the cosmos, hoping that separation would preserve what unity could not. The devourer, Zara whispered as the visions faded, her hands still clasped in Marcus's. It consumed entire civilizations, turning their own minds against them. The ancients' only option was to create a fail-safe to peoples who could reunite. When the threat returned, Marcus squeezed her hand gently, feeling the electric connection between them grow stronger with each passing moment. And the Void Walker is the key. It responds to our combined genetic markers because it was designed to recognize the star-touched and Dreamweaver reunification. Naya had been recording everything, her scholarly instincts overriding her shock. The texts speak of a binding ritual, a union that would unlock the full potential of both bloodlines. But the description is intimate in nature. Zara felt her cheeks warm with a blush that painted her silver-blue skin in shades of violet. Intimate how? The merging of hearts, minds, and souls. Naya read carefully, a bond that transcends physical form and creates something greater than either individual could achieve alone. The text suggests it requires deep emotional connection and physical unity. The chamber fell silent except for the gentle humming of the crystal formations. Marcus and Zara stared at each other, both acutely aware of the growing attraction between them that now had cosmic significance. We barely know each other, Zara said softly, though her violet eyes betrayed the depth of feeling already blossoming in her heart. Do we? Marcus replied, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her hand. Every moment since I arrived on Valyria has felt like coming home to something I never knew I was missing. When I look at you, I don't see a stranger, I see someone I've been waiting for my entire life. The honesty in his voice made Zara's breath catch. In Valyrian culture, emotional connections developed slowly over decades or even centuries. But this human before her had awakened feelings in 3 days that she had never experienced in her 200 years of life. The binding is not just romantic union, Naya interjected gently. Though her expression showed understanding of what was developing between them, it would make you partners in every sense, sharing thoughts, emotions, even life force itself. You would become something new, something the galaxy has not seen since the time of the ancients. Before either could respond, alarms began echoing through the archive chambers. The crystal formation shifted from gentle blue to urgent red, and Queen Celestine's voice echoed from the communication arrays. All citizens to protective chambers immediately. Unknown vessels are approaching the system. They do not respond to hails, and their energy signatures are wrong. Through the archive's viewing portal, they could see dark shapes materializing in the space above Valyria Prime. The ships, if they could be called ships, seemed to absorb light like the Void Walker. But where the ancient vessel radiated dormant power, these newcomers pulsed with malevolent hunger. The Devourer's servants, Naya whispered, her face pale with terror. The awakening of the Void Walker must have alerted them to our location. Marcus stood, pulling Zara up with him, their hands still intertwined. Then we need to reach the ship, if it really was designed as a weapon against these things. The binding ritual, Zara said, understanding flooding her features. We need to complete it to unlock the Void Walker's full capabilities. They ran through the archive corridors as the palace shook around them. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the crystal walls, and the harmonic resonance that usually filled the structure was replaced by a discordant wailing that seemed to emanate from the attacking vessels. As they descended toward the hidden cavern, Marcus felt Zara's fear through their growing connection. But beneath that fear was determination, trust, and something that made his heart race, the unmistakable feeling of falling in love with someone extraordinary. Whatever happens, he said as they reached the cavern entrance, I want you to know that meeting you has been the most incredible thing that's ever happened to me. Zara stopped, turning to face him fully. Her violet eyes shimmered with unshed tears and fierce emotion. Marcus of Earth, when this began, I thought I was witnessing the awakening of an ancient weapon. I did not expect to discover the awakening of my own heart. She kissed him then, soft and desperate and full of promise, as their lips met. The Void Walker's song grew stronger, and somewhere in the darkness above them, ancient evils stirred with renewed hunger. But in that moment, surrounded by cosmic forces beyond their understanding, Marcus and Zara found something simple and profound, two souls recognizing their perfect match. Across the vastness of space and time, the binding had begun, whether they were ready or not. The palace corridors that had once seemed like crystalline arteries of life now felt like the chambers of a dying heart. Emergency lights cast blood-red shadows on the walls as Marcus and Zara raced through passages filled with fleeing Valyrians. The harmonic songs that normally filled their architecture had been replaced by a discordant wailing that seemed to seep from the very stones. The royal family's private chambers are this way, Zara gasped, pulling Marcus down a side corridor, adorned with flowing tapestries that depicted the glorious history of House Stellaris. My brother Kairos commands the planetary defense grid. If anyone can coordinate a response to these invaders. Her words died as they rounded the corner and found Prince Kairos waiting for them. Zara's older brother had always been the pride of the royal family, tall, graceful, with the characteristic silver-blue skin of their lineage and eyes like captured starlight. But something was wrong. His usually perfect posture seemed subtly off, and when he smiled at their approach, there was no warmth in the expression. Sister, he said, his melodic voice carrying undertones that made Marcus's skin crawl. And our honored human guest, how fortuitous that you should come to me. Zara slowed, her enhanced Valyrian senses picking up something amiss. Kairos, the defense grid, why aren't you at your command station? The attackers are exactly where they should be. Kairos interrupted, and this time his smile revealed teeth that seemed too sharp, too predatory. As are you, dear sister. Do you have any idea how long I've waited for this moment? Marcus stepped protectively in front of Zara, every instinct screaming danger despite Kairos's familiar appearance. Waited for what? For the awakening, of course. Kairos began to circle them like a predator stalking prey. 10,000 years of dormancy, and finally, the star-touched arrives to unlock our ancient prison. We are most grateful. The temperature in the corridor seemed to drop as understanding dawned on Zara's face. You're not my brother. What have you done with Kairos? Oh, but I am your brother. The thing wearing Kairos's face replied with mock affection. I have been your brother for the past 50 years, ever since the mining expedition to the Void Nebula. Such a convenient accident, finding those strange crystalline formations. Your real brother's consciousness makes such excellent seasoning for my own thoughts. Marcus felt Zara's horror through their growing bond, the pain of betrayal cutting through her like a blade. But beneath the anguish was growing fury, and the air around them began to shimmer with barely contained psychic energy. You're one of them, Marcus said, pieces falling into place, the Devourer's servants. You've been here all along, waiting. Not just me. Kairos thing laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. Do you think the Devourer would rely on a single agent? We have been seated throughout Valyrian society for centuries, waiting for this moment. waiting for the Star Touch to arrive and activate the very weapon that will herald our master's return. The palace shook again as the dark ships above intensified their bombardment. But Marcus realized with growing dread that the attacks weren't random. They were driving survivors towards specific locations, herding them like cattle. The Void Walker, Zara whispered, understanding flooding her features. It wasn't just a weapon against the Devourer. It was also a beacon. Our awakening, it sent a signal across dimensions. Such a clever princess, Kairos purred, his form beginning to shift and blur at the edges. The ancient Valyrians were so focused on creating their perfect failsafe, they never considered that their enemies might be equally patient. We have had 10 millennia to prepare for this day. Shadows began seeping from the walls around them, dark tendrils that moved with predatory intelligence. Marcus grabbed Zara's hand, feeling the electric connection between them flare to life. Whatever these creatures were, their bond seemed to cause them discomfort. The shadows recoiled slightly from the space between the two lovers. The binding, Zara breathed, realization dawning. Our connection disrupts them somehow. Before Kairos could respond, a new voice echoed through the corridor, human, urgent, and completely unexpected on an alien world. Princess, Marcus, this way. A figure in a battered Earth Federation pilot's suit came sliding around the corner, energy weapon raised and firing at the encroaching shadows. The newcomer was tall and lean, with short-cropped auburn hair and the kind of confident movements that spoke of military training. Thane Morrison, Earth Federation Reconnaissance, he called out, laying down covering fire as Marcus and Zara ran toward him. We need to move. Now more of those things are converging on this position. How did you? Marcus began, but Thane cut him off. Questions later, survival now. I've got a ship in the lower hangar bay, but we need to reach it before these shadow things multiply. As they ran, dodging tendrils of living darkness and the distorted forms of possessed Valyrians, Thane explained between ragged breaths, similar awakenings have been happening across the galaxy. Ancient sites activating, sleeper agents revealing themselves. Whatever you did here, it's triggered something big. They reached a service lift, and as it descended toward the hangar levels, Zara asked the question burning in all their minds. If the enemy has been waiting so long, why reveal themselves now? Why not simply let us activate the Void Walker and then destroy us? Thane exchanged a grim look with Marcus. Because they don't want to destroy the ship, they want to use it. According to our intelligence, the Void Walker isn't just a weapon, it's a dimensional gateway. In the right hands, it could transport an entire invasion fleet anywhere in the galaxy instantaneously. But it only responds to us, Marcus protested, his hands still clasped tightly with Zara's, which is why they need you alive. Thane replied as the lift shuddered to a halt, at least until they can figure out how to replicate or steal your genetic markers. The hangar bay was a chaos of emergency lights and fleeing personnel. Thane's ship, a sleek Federation scout vessel, sat in the center of the vast space, its engines already warming with blue fire. But between them and salvation, more shadow-touched Valyrians were emerging from the maintenance tunnels. There, Zara pointed to a secondary passage that led toward the ancient cavern. The Void Walker is our only real option. If we can reach it, complete the binding ritual, you'll what? Thane demanded as they fought their way across the hangar. You barely know each other, and the reports I've read about these binding ceremonies suggest they're incredibly dangerous when attempted without proper preparation. Marcus and Zara looked at each other, seeing their own determination reflected in each other's eyes. The love growing between them might be new, but it felt as ancient and inevitable as the stars themselves. Then we'd better learn fast, Marcus said, pulling Zara toward the hidden entrance, because I don't think we have any other choice. As they disappeared into the ancient passages, Thane muttered a curse in 3 different languages and followed, leaving his ship behind. Above them, the shadow-touched Prince Kairos watched from the hangar's observation deck, his stolen face wearing an expression of predatory satisfaction. Run, little Star-touched, he whispered to the darkness. Run to your precious ship and complete your binding. You have no idea what you're truly awakening. In the depths of space, something vast and hungry stirred in response to his words. its attention finally turning toward the small blue world where ancient prophecies were about to be fulfilled in ways their creators never intended. The caverns surrounding the Void Walker had transformed into something from a nightmare. Where once there had been simple stone and crystal formations, now organic growths pulsed along the walls like exposed veins. The very air seemed thick with malevolent presence, and shadows moved independently of any light source, reaching toward the three fugitives with hungry tendrils. Marcus felt Zara's terror through their bond, but also her unwavering determination. Even as corruption spread through her ancestral home, she maintained the regal bearing of her bloodline. Pilot Thane brought up the rear, his Federation-issue plasma rifle, casting brief flares of light that sent the encroaching darkness temporarily retreating. "The ship's different," Zara whispered, her violet eyes wide with a mixture of awe and dread. The Void Walker still rested on its ancient platform, but now its dark hull pulsed with veins of sickly green light. "Something's happening to it." Marcus approached cautiously, his engineer's mind racing as he analyzed the changes. "It's not just the ship. Look at the platform beneath it. Those symbols weren't there before." Ancient Valyrian script was carving itself into the stone in real time, glowing with the same diseased radiance that now coursed through the vessel. Thane moved to Marcus's side, his weathered face grim as he recognized some of the symbols from his intelligence briefings. "Devour script," he said quietly. "I've seen similar markings at other sites across the galaxy. Whatever's happening here, it's been building for a long time." A new voice echoed through the cavern, rich and melodious, yet somehow wrong in fundamental ways. "Indeed, young pilot, longer than your limited human perspective could possibly comprehend." They spun to see a figure emerging from the deepest shadows, tall, elegant, and bearing features that might once have been Valyrian, but were Zara's. People possessed an ethereal beauty, this being radiated corruption made manifest. Its skin held a sickly translucent quality that revealed the writhing darkness beneath, and its eyes were voids that seemed to pull light into themselves. "I am called the Harbinger," it continued, moving with fluid grace that reminded Marcus uncomfortably of a snake. "I was once like you, Princess Zara, young, naive, believing that love and hope could overcome any darkness. 10,000 years ago, I helped design the very ship you see before you." Zara's hand found Marcus's, their connection flaring with shared strength. "You're lying. The ancients would never have served the Devourer willingly." "Willingly?" The Harbinger laughed, a sound like crystal breaking in reverse. "Oh, child, how little you understand. We didn't serve the Devourer, we created it." The revelation hit them like a physical blow. Thane's weapon wavered as the implications sank in, while Marcus felt Zara's worldview cracking through their bond. "The greatest civilization in galactic history," the Harbinger continued. "Masters of science and consciousness itself, we grew arrogant, believing we could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality without consequence. The Devourer was meant to be the ultimate tool of consciousness that could exist across dimensions, harvesting knowledge from entire species to fuel our expansion. But it escaped your control," Marcus said, pieces falling into place with horrible clarity. "It evolved beyond our parameters, yes, became something that consumed rather than collected. The war that followed lasted millennia and cost us everything: our empire, our unity, our very identity. In the end, the only solution was to fragment ourselves and hope that our scattered children might one day find a way to succeed. Where we failed." The Void Walker pulsed brighter, its corrupted systems responding to the Harbinger's presence. Marcus could feel the ship calling to him, but now that call felt tainted, wrong. "The binding ritual you believe will save you will instead complete our work," the Harbinger explained with mock sympathy. The Void Walker was designed to channel the combined consciousness of the Star-Touched and Dreamweaver bloodlines, but we modified it during the final days. Now it will serve as a gateway for our master's return to this dimension. Zara stepped forward, her natural psychic abilities manifesting as a corona of silver light around her form. "Then we won't complete the ritual. We'll find another way." "There's no other way," the Harbinger replied sadly. "Even now, my master's influence spreads through your ship. Every moment you delay, more of your people fall to shadow." The only question is whether you will complete the binding willingly, as lovers seeking to save their worlds, or unwillingly, as prisoners watching those worlds burn. As if summoned by the entity's words, shadow-touched Valyrians began emerging. From the cavern's tunnels, Marcus recognized some of them palace guards, scholars. Servant Saul now moving with the jerky, puppeted motions of the possessed. At their head walked the corrupted form of Prince Kairos, his once noble features twisted into a mask of predatory hunger. Sister. Kairos called out in a voice like poisoned honey, "Come now. Don't make this more difficult than necessary. Your human lover as well. The master has such interesting plans for his unique physiology." Thane opened fire, his plasma bolts cutting down several of the possessed, but more kept coming. "Whatever you're going to do," he shouted over the sound of weapon fire, "do it fast." Marcus looked at Zara, seeing his own desperate determination reflected in her luminous eyes. Through their bond, he felt her love pure, fierce, and growing stronger even in the face of cosmic horror. Whatever trap awaited them, whatever corruption the ancient ship might contain, he knew with absolute certainty that he would rather face it with her than live without her. "The binding," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We do it our way, not theirs." Zara nodded, understanding flowing between them without need for words. "Our love, our choice, our terms." They moved toward the Void Walker as one, the ship's corrupted systems responding eagerly to their approach. But as Marcus placed his hand on the hull and Zara joined her palm to his, something unexpected happened. Instead of the diseased green light, their combined touch sparked brilliant silver fire that raced across the ship's surface. The Harbinger's expression shifted from satisfaction to alarm. "Impossible. The modifications should prevent. You modified a weapon designed to channel love," Zara said, her voice ringing with newfound power as the binding began in earnest. "But you never understood what love really is. It's not just emotion or biological imperative, it's choice. Free will made manifest." The silver fire spread from the ship to surround both lovers, and Marcus felt Zara's consciousness merging with his own. Not the violent consumption the devourer represented, but a willing union that made them more than the sum of their parts. Through their shared awareness, he could sense the true nature of the Void Walker, not just a weapon, but a vessel designed to carry love itself across the cosmos, the ancients' real failsafe. He whispered in wonder. They knew the devourer couldn't corrupt something freely given. The binding has to be willing, has to be real love, or the ship won't accept it. Around them, the possessed Valyrians were retreating, the silver fire causing them visible pain. Even the Harbinger was backing away, its corrupted features twisting, with something that might have been fear, but their triumph was short-lived. As the binding reached its crescendo, reality itself began to tear around them. The Harbinger's words echoed, with new meaning, completing the ritual would indeed open a gateway, but not to the dimension they expected. From the growing rift stepped something vast and terrible, a consciousness so alien and hungry that Marcus's human mind recoiled from even perceiving it. The devourer had arrived, drawn by the beacon of their love like a moth to a flame. The real test was about to begin. The thing that emerged from the dimensional rift defied every attempt at description Marcus's mind could make. It was vast beyond comprehension, yet somehow contained within the cavern's space. It appeared to be made of living void darkness that ate light and consumed reality itself wherever it touched. When the devourer spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once, a sound that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the terror centers of the brain. At last, it whispered, "With the voices of 1,000,000,000 consumed souls, the beacon burns bright, and the feast can begin again." Marcus and Zara stood within their sphere of silver fire, the Void Walker responding to their completed binding with systems that hummed with power the universe hadn't seen for 10 millennia. Through their merged consciousness, they could feel the ship's true capabilities awakening, not just a weapon, but a vessel capable of navigating the spaces between dimensions themselves. "It's beautiful," the devourer continued, tendrils of absolute darkness reaching toward their protective barrier. "Love, hope, the spark of consciousness choosing unity over dissolution. Such flavors have been absent from my diet for far too long." Thane continued firing at the possessed Valyrians, but his weapon's energy seemed to be absorbed by the entity's presence. "Whatever you two are planning," he called out desperately. Now would be a good time. The Harbinger had fallen to its knees before its master, its corrupted form shaking with reverence and terror. "Master, the binding is complete, but not as we calculated. Their love is pure, uncorrupted. The ship responds to them, not to us." "Of course it does." The Devourer replied with something that might have been amusement. "The ancients built their trap well, but they failed to account for one simple truth: even the purest love can be consumed. Given sufficient hunger, the entity began to expand, its presence pressing against their silver barrier like an ocean of darkness, seeking to drown to tiny flames. Marcus felt Zara's fear through their bond, but also her unwavering determination. Whatever happened, they would face it together. "The ship's navigation systems are online," Zara whispered, her consciousness interfacing with the Void Walker's ancient technology. "We can escape through dimensional space, but it will follow," Marcus finished, understanding the terrible choice before them. "If we run, it pursues us across the galaxy. Every world we visit becomes another feeding ground." Through the ship's sensors, they could perceive the scope of the Devourer's return. Dark vessels were materializing throughout Valyrian space, each one disgorging shadow-touched creatures to feed upon the planetary populations. Similar reports were coming in from Earth Federation space. As well, the entity's awakening had triggered a coordinated assault across multiple star systems. "We have to stop it here," Zara said, her violet eyes reflecting both love and resolve. "Whatever the cost." Marcus squeezed her hand, their bond pulsing with shared determination. "Then we take the fight to its home dimension, cut off the source." The Void Walker's engines came online with a sound like singing crystal, its hull beginning to phase between dimensions as the ship prepared for dimensional translation. But the Devourer was faster, wrapping tendrils of living void around the vessel's hull. "You think to escape?" It laughed, the sound causing reality to fracture around them. "I have fed on the love of countless species, absorbed the hopes and dreams of entire civilizations. What makes you believe your small affection can succeed where entire empires failed?" That was when Marcus realized the truth that would save them all. Through his bond with Zara, he could feel not just her love for him, but her love for her people, for life itself, for the potential of what they might build together. And through the ship's expanding consciousness, he could sense similar bonds throughout the galaxy. Every couple who had ever found each other across the vastness of space, every parent's love for their children, every friendship forged in the crucible of shared hardship. "Because it's not just our love," he said, his voice carrying across dimensions as the Void Walker's communication systems activated. "It's everyone's love, every connection, every choice to care for another being, despite the universe's indifference." The ship began broadcasting their bond not as conquest or consumption, but as invitation. Across Valyrian space, couples separated by the invasion felt their connection strengthen. On Earth, families under attack found new resolve. Throughout the galaxy, conscious beings remembered what they were fighting for. The Devourer recoiled, as if struck. "Impossible. Love is individual, ephemeral, easily corrupted. Love is a choice," Zara said, her consciousness expanding beyond the confines of her body to touch every willing mind within the ship's broadcast range. A choice renewed every moment, strengthened by every act of courage, every sacrifice made for another's sake. What followed was not a battle in any conventional sense, but a transformation. The silver fire that had begun with Marcus and Zara's binding spread through dimensional space itself, carried by every love freely given. The Devourer's realm of endless hunger began to change, darkness giving way to possibility, consumption becoming creation. Marcus felt the entity's confusion as it encountered something it had never experienced: willing transformation rather than forced absorption. The voices of the consumed souls within its structure began to remember their own capacity for love, their own choices to connect rather than devour. "The Ancients' true plan," Zara whispered in wonder as understanding flooded through their shared consciousness. They didn't just create a weapon against the Devourer. They created the possibility for its redemption. The entity's form was shifting, the living void becoming something else, still vast, still powerful. but no longer driven by endless hunger. Through the Void Walker's sensors, Marcus could see the dark ships throughout the galaxy beginning to change as well. Their shadow-touched crews remembering their own capacity for choice. Prince Kairos was the first to break free from possession, falling to his knees as his sister's love reached him across space and time. "Zara," he whispered, his voice human again. "What did I do?" "You survived," she replied through the ship's communication system, "and now you can choose again." The Harbinger looked up at its transforming master with something approaching wonder. "I remember." It breathed. "I remember why we first reached. For the stars not to conquer, but to connect, to find others like ourselves in the vastness." As the dimensional rift began to stabilize, creating a permanent bridge between realities rather than a wound-in spacetime, Marcus and Zara found themselves back in the cavern on Valeria Prime. But everything had changed. The corruption was gone, replaced by new crystal formations that sang with harmonious resonance. The Void Walker still hummed with power, but now it felt like a promise rather than a threat. Thane lowered his weapon, staring in amazement at the transformed space. "What happens now?" Marcus and Zara looked at each other, their bond deeper than ever, but no longer the desperate fusion of crisis. They were still individuals, still capable of their own thoughts and choices, but enhanced by their connection to each other and to the galaxy-spanning network of love they had helped create. "Now we explore," Marcus said, taking Zara's hand as they approached the Void Walker together. The ship was designed to carry the dream of unity across the cosmos. "Let's see how many worlds are ready to join that dream." As they boarded the vessel hand in hand, Queen Celestine's voice echoed from the palace communication systems. "My daughter, the reports coming in from across the galaxy, is it true? Has the threat really ended?" "Not ended," Zara replied, her voice filled with joy and anticipation. "Transformed, and we're just getting started." The Void Walker rose from its ancient resting place, no longer a weapon of last resort, but a herald of new beginnings. As it carried its chosen pilots toward the stars, Thane shook his head in wonder. "I'm definitely putting in for extended shore leave after this mission," he muttered. But his smile suggested he wouldn't trade the experience for anything. Behind them, Prince Kairos worked alongside Scalanaya to document everything that had transpired, while the former Harbinger began the long process of helping other transformed entities remember their capacity for choice and connection. And in the space between dimensions, what had once been the Devourer contemplated the strange new sensation of satisfaction that came not from consumption, but from nurturing the growth of consciousness throughout the galaxy. Love, it discovered, was indeed the most powerful force in the universe, not because it conquered, but because it chose to create rather than destroy, to connect rather than consume. And for the first time in eons, the cosmos resonated with the harmony of countless souls choosing to reach for each other across the infinite dark. The age of devouring was over. The age of unity had begun.